Why do people earning several $1,000s a month still have no savings? Why does money run out faster than income grows?
Why doesn't a pay raise solve financial problems? The truth is that most people simply don't know how to save.
My name is Richard Leontiev. This is the Best Financial Channel. Like it, and let's get started.
Many people believe that you can only start saving if you have a high income. But financial statistics and real-life examples consistently show that this is a very common misconception that prevents people from even trying to build savings.
In practice, people with the same salaries often achieve completely different financial results because some consciously save and plan their spending, while others spend everything they earn without any clear system or financial strategy.
Saving is first and foremost a financial habit that is formed through discipline, regular repetition of correct actions, thoughtful decisions, and constant control over daily and monthly expenses.
It is habits that control money in the long run, not the size of a salary or random financial opportunities that appear from time to time without any stability.
Today, we will look at 7 practical rules that will help you start saving even with a relatively small income and gradually begin to build your personal financial capital step by step.
These rules are based on simple and clear principles of financial discipline that work in practice and can be applied by almost anyone regardless of their income level, profession, or current financial situation.
The first rule is to identify budget leaks, because most financial problems begin with small, unnoticed expenses that gradually accumulate and quietly drain your money.
Most people genuinely do not understand where a significant portion of their monthly income goes, even if they feel that they are not buying anything expensive.
The first rule is to identify budget leaks, because most financial problems begin with small, unnoticed expenses that gradually accumulate and quietly drain your money.
When expenses are not recorded anywhere, it creates the illusion that money simply disappears for no clear reason.
In reality, money is usually spent on dozens of small purchases and everyday expenses that individually seem completely insignificant and harmless.
However, these small expenses are repeated almost every day, and over time they quietly accumulate and become a noticeable and sometimes very serious burden on the overall household budget.
Regular coffee, spontaneous taxi rides, frequent food delivery, and various unnecessary digital subscriptions may seem harmless. But over time, these everyday habits slowly and almost imperceptibly drain your available cash.
Each of these expenses may appear small and insignificant at the moment of purchase, but when you calculate their total over an entire year, they can easily consume a surprisingly large portion of your income.
When a person begins to carefully track and count their money, they often see the real picture of their finances clearly for the very first time in their life.
Actual numbers quickly dispel financial illusions and clearly demonstrate where the main leaks in the budget occur and which expenses silently consume the most money.
Consistent control over expenses gradually builds financial discipline and helps people make calmer, more rational, and better thought out financial decisions.
And this kind of financial awareness and control is always the very first and most important step toward creating stable and sustainable long-term savings.
Most people try to put money aside only at the end of the month. But this approach is actually a financial trap that prevents many from ever building savings.
By the time all bills, daily purchases, and spontaneous expenses are paid, the budget is usually already exhausted and there are simply no resources left for saving anything.
When people wait until the end of the month to save money, they unknowingly place their financial goals last. And in practice, money almost always gets spent on small and often unnecessary things.
The pay yourself first rule works much more effectively. As soon as income arrives, a portion of the money is immediately transferred into savings or investments before any spending begins.
Even if this amount is only around 10% of your income, over time, it can grow into significant capital because consistent saving forms a reliable financial system.
If 10% feels too difficult for your current budget, it is perfectly fine to start with a smaller share, such as 3 to 5% of your income.
At the early stage, the main objective is not the size of the amount you save, but the development of a consistent habit of putting money aside regularly.
Over time, these habits become automatic, and begin to shape your long-term financial stability and future opportunities.
Rule 3 is to divide your money into clear categories so that each part of your budget has a specific purpose and role.
When all of your money sits in one unstructured account, it creates the illusion that there is always enough available to spend.
As a result, expenses slowly grow almost unnoticed throughout the month until, suddenly, you discover that your balance has dropped to nearly zero.
That is why financially disciplined people allocate their income into different categories immediately after receiving it.
This approach ensures that every portion of the budget is assigned to a specific purpose, such as living expenses, savings, investments, or personal spending.
The first and most important category in any personal budget is housing, since rent, utility payments, and other essential bills must always be covered first to avoid late fees, penalties, or serious financial stress.
The second category is food, and it is very important to determine your monthly food budget in advance so that everyday grocery shopping does not gradually turn into constant impulse spending.
The next category is transportation, because travel expenses, fuel costs, public transport tickets, and occasional taxi rides should also be planned ahead to prevent unnecessary pressure on your budget.
Another important category is entertainment, because rest and leisure activities are necessary for a balanced life, but they must always remain within reasonable limits that do not undermine your financial stability.
When the money allocated to one specific category runs out, spending in that category should automatically stop, and this simple rule gradually creates real and sustainable financial discipline.
Rule 4 is to create a backup system that protects your finances and gives you stability, even when unexpected situations arise in life.
Any truly stable financial system does not begin with investments or complex strategies, but with the creation of a reliable financial reserve that protects a person from uncertainty.
Job loss, health problems, sudden repairs, or urgent family expenses can occur without warning. And without a financial safety net, these events quickly become a source of serious stress.
For this reason, a financial safety net should ideally cover all necessary living expenses for at least 3 to 6 months, giving a person enough time to calmly find solutions.
This reserve performs a protective role because it allows you to avoid taking out expensive loans, selling valuable assets, or making rushed financial decisions under pressure.
It is extremely important to store this reserve in a safe and easily accessible account so that you can quickly use these funds whenever a real emergency appears.
This protective reserve should not be invested in stocks or other risky assets, because during a crisis, the financial market may also be experiencing a downturn.
Rule 5 is to deal with your debts as early as possible, because unresolved debt obligations gradually undermine your financial stability and make it much harder to build savings.
High-interest loans slowly destroy your financial progress because a significant share of your income is constantly used to pay bank interest instead of helping you build your own future.
If the interest rate on your debt is high, it is much more effective to focus on paying it off first, because interest continues to increase the total amount you owe every single month.
Interest rates on consumer loans often greatly exceed the average return from investments, which means your assets may grow slowly while your debt keeps expanding.
Because of this imbalance, debt becomes a heavy financial anchor that constantly pulls down your budget and prevents you from building meaningful savings or investments.
The faster you eliminate expensive debt obligations, the sooner you free part of your income that can then be redirected towards savings, investments, and long-term capital.
Write in the comments what percentage of your income you currently manage to save each month, because this simple habit often determines your long-term financial stability.
Also share whether you manage to put money aside consistently every month, or whether there are periods when circumstances force you to temporarily pause saving.
Rule 6 is to protect your money from inflation, because money should never simply remain idle for long periods of time without generating any return.
Over time, the value of money slowly decreases because prices for goods, services, housing, and everyday necessities continue to rise year after year.
Inflation steadily reduces the purchasing power of money, meaning the same amount of savings can buy fewer goods and services several years later.
Because of this, it is important to keep at least part of your savings in accounts or financial instruments that help partially compensate for inflation.
Even a modest interest rate on savings accounts or conservative investments can help preserve the value of money and protect your capital from gradual depreciation.
Rule 7 is to work consistently on increasing your income, because income growth is one of the most powerful drivers of financial progress and long-term wealth building.
Income growth is a key factor in financial development because only a steady increase in earnings gradually opens up new opportunities for saving, investing, and planning.
Saving is extremely important because it teaches you to control money consciously, reduce wasteful spending, and avoid many unnecessary expenses in everyday life.
However, saving also has a natural limit, since it is impossible to endlessly reduce expenses without eventually affecting comfort, well-being, and overall quality of life.
Real and sustainable financial growth begins when a person starts working systematically on expanding their income sources, instead of relying only on cutting expenses.
New professional skills significantly increase your value in the labor market and allow you to negotiate better positions, higher salaries, and more stable opportunities.
The higher your income becomes over time, the more money you can comfortably allocate toward investments, savings accounts, and long-term capital accumulation.
Savings almost never begin with large amounts, because in reality, most people build financial security slowly by consistently accumulating small sums over time.
In fact, everything starts with strong financial habits that gradually develop discipline, patience, and the ability to think about money in a long-term perspective.
If you apply even a few of these rules in your everyday financial life, you will notice that money stops disappearing unpredictably at the end of each month.
Gradually, your money will begin to work for your future, helping you create stronger financial stability and giving you greater freedom of choice in life.
Subscribe to the channel if you want to understand more clearly how money really works and how to build a simple but effective personal financial system.
Here we discuss finances openly and honestly, without complicated terminology or popular myths, focusing instead on practical ideas and real financial behavior.
Watch the other videos on this channel and start building a financial system today that will steadily work for your capital, your security, and your future.